Hi everyone, it's Cindy. If you want to be notified of any uploads on my channel, please subscribe and hit the bell. Also, I love you all so much. Today's a milestone. I have 16,000 friends now on YouTube. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you, thank you. If you have any requests, email me, twistedtruecindy@gmail.com, or check out bonus clips on Patreon if you want to support my channel also. Talk to you later. Love you guys. Bye. This video is for Mollie Tibbetts, 20 years old, who was murdered in 2018. On July 19th, 2018, Mollie Tibbetts, date of birth, 5/8/1998, was reported missing in Poweshiek County in Iowa. Shortly after she was reported missing, video footage was collected from an area on the east side of Brooklyn, Poweshiek County, Iowa. The video was from the evening of July 18th, 2018, and after review of the video, it was determined that Mollie Tibbetts could be seen running. She was running near the area of Boundary and Middle Street when a dark-colored Chevy Malibu appeared in the same vicinity. The dark-colored Chevy Malibu can be seen numerous times driving back and forth in the area. It was determined through other investigation that the dark-colored Malibu was connected to Christhian Rivera. On August 20th, 2018, Rivera was questioned by law enforcement about the disappearance of Mollie Tibbetts. He admitted to making contact with a female that was running in Brooklyn. Rivera stated he pursued her in his vehicle in an area east of Brooklyn, Poweshiek County, Iowa. And you can see how remote these roads are. Rivera stated he parked his car, got out of it, and was running behind her and alongside of her. And he stated she grabbed her phone and threatened him and said, "I'm going to call the police," which anybody would do. But then he said he panicked and blocked his memory, which is what he does when he gets very upset, and doesn't remember anything after that till he was driving and he noticed the earpiece to Mollie's headphones were in his lap. And that's how he realized he had put Mollie in his trunk. He came to an intersection, made a U-turn, and went back to the entrance to a field. Drove into a driveway to a very large cornfield. Went to get Mollie out of the trunk and noticed blood on the side of her head. Defendant Rivera described Mollie's clothing, including an earphone or headphone set. He further described dragging Mollie on foot from his vehicle to a secluded location in a cornfield. He described putting her over his shoulder, taking her about 20 meters into the cornfield. And that's where he left her face up, and he covered her with corn leaves and corn stalks. Defendant was able to use his phone to determine the route he traveled from Brooklyn, Iowa. He then later guided law enforcement to the exact location from memory. Now, if you guys see these roads, you see where the field is. Unless you know these roads, I don't care what phone you have, you're not going to be able to remember where she is unless you are the one that put her there. I think now they're starting to get kind of hung up on he wasn't read his Miranda rights correctly because he doesn't really speak English very well, and kind of suggesting that he was framed, which is bullshit. So law enforcement located the remains of Mollie in the cornfield, exactly where he said she was, wearing exactly what he said she was wearing. The medical examiner stated Mollie died from multiple sharp force injuries. Mollie's mom, Laura Calderwood, said her daughter was stabbed in the chest and once in the head, and that was according to the Washington Post. And she said that her daughter died a horrific death. Rivera's former attorney, Ellen Richards, once stated to People magazine that his client is just an all-American boy working really hard. According to ABC 7, Rivera's ex-girlfriend, Iris Monarez, was friends with Mollie on Facebook. And Monarez attended his first court appearance with their little daughter in 2018.
A first-degree murder charge was filed today in connection with the disappearance of Mollie Tibbetts, who was last seen jogging in Brooklyn, Iowa on July 18, 2018. A complaint and affidavit names Christian Rivera, age 24, who resides in rural Poweshiek County, and he has been charged with murder in the first degree. Dozens of law enforcement officials from local, state, and federal agencies were involved in the investigation after the disappearance of Mollie Tibbetts. A body was discovered early this morning in a farm field southeast of Brooklyn, Iowa. The identity has not been confirmed, however, we believe it to be the body of Mollie Tibbetts. A complaint and affidavit, which will be provided to you, will provide the details and of allegations against Mr. Rivera. Charges were filed in the Poweshiek County District Court. The case will be prosecuted by the Iowa Attorney General's Area Prosecution Division, and first-degree murder carries a penalty of life without the possibility of parole. And I'll be happy to answer as many questions as I can. Yes, sir. I'm sorry?
Status and his background.
We have confirmed with Homeland Security investigations that he is an illegal alien, and we believe he has been in this area now for 4 to 7 years.
How did you come into contact with him? How did you get on your radar?
Well, during the investigation, we reached out to the public, as you well know. And during our neighborhood canvass, we came across an individual that had security cameras. We took those cameras. He was kind enough to give us the footage from it. And through that, we were able to identify a vehicle that we believe belonged to Mr. Rivera. It was a black Malibu. And from that, we were able to track his pattern and the routes in which he took. We're also able to find Mollie running on this video, and we're able to determine that he was one of the last ones to have seen Mollie running based on the video, again, that we were able to seize from the general public.
Investigators have searched this area generally.
I'm sorry?
Do you believe that he abducted her? What did he tell you? What do you believe he did?
Well, again, we were able to pull him in during the investigation. We conducted a lengthy interview with Mr. Rivera, and during that interview, he tells us that he sees Mollie running and was able to come upon her, approach her, and while he was interfacing with her, he actually tells us that he ran alongside of her or behind her. And then at one point, he tells us that Mollie grabbed a hold of her phone and said, "You need to leave me alone. I'm going to call the police." And then she took off running. He in turn chased her down. And then he tells us that at some point in time, he blacks out. And then he comes to near an intersection in which we believe he then placed Mollie.
Do you believe that he raped her or attacked her?
I'm sorry?
Where did this happen? What street?
On 385th Street
In what town?
in Brooklyn, outside of Brooklyn, actually, in the rural county, just outside of Brooklyn, Iowa.
On this side over here, that general area has been searched by investigators the last several weeks. What led you specifically to this area today, this morning?
On 385th Street or the location of Mollie? Because there are two different locations.
Location where Mollie remained.
Actually, after we got done interviewing Mr. Rivera, he led us to her location. And that location was near 460th Street or Avenue in rural Poweshiek County.
Any information on how she was killed?
We aren't able to release all the information in the investigation, and so I hope you understand that I can't give everything out.
Investigators have been searching this area for weeks. Why was she not found before? Why did it take this suspect to leave to her body?
Well, I'm sure you've driven around the area, and it's a rural county, and there are a lot of fields, a lot of woods, a lot of ditches. We have certainly had extensive searches throughout the county. We just didn't have success locating her. In this particular case, she was found in a cornfield, and there were corn stalks placed over the top of her, and so we just weren't able to locate her at this particular part of the investigation. Yes?
Talk about the timeline when you got this security video, when you found out about Mr. Rivera, when you questioned him, this kind of when this all happened.
Well, we got the video a week or two ago, and we spent hours going through the video trying to, first of all, locate Mollie on it. Secondly, see if there's anything suspicious following Mollie, which is what we did.
So on February 4th, 2020, the Courier reported police officer Pamela Romero, who obtained the confession from Rivera in the disappearance and death of Mollie Tibbetts, said she made an honest mistake when she failed to read him his complete Miranda rights. She read him his rights during his August 20th, 2018 interrogation, but didn't realize until later that she left one part out, failing to tell him that his statements could be used against him in court. Romero said her failure was a mistake, not an attempt to keep him talking without a lawyer. After several more hours of questioning, Rivera led officers to the cornfield where they discovered Mollie's body. Mollie had disappeared a month earlier while out for her run in her hometown of Brooklyn, and it sparked a massive search. So after Mollie's body was found, Officer Romero said she read Rivera his rights completely again. Rivera's lawyers say investigators swept into his workplace, coerced him into giving an interview, suggested he didn't need a lawyer, and continued questioning him for 11 hours, even after he was falling asleep at times. Investigators testified that Rivera consented to the interview and was free to leave for the first 6 hours. After 6 hours, they got an immigration detainer to keep him in custody because they found blood in the trunk of his car. They're saying he's not living legally in the United States, but he had given consent for the vehicle search. Prosecutors concede that Rivera's statements for about 5 hours leading to Mollie's body being discovered are likely inadmissible due to the incomplete Miranda warning. But they say the body itself should be admitted as evidence, arguing it would have been found anyway. Let's take a look at his original plea in 2018.
Brooke, you ready? We opened the record this morning in Poweshiek County case number FECR 010822. The state of Iowa is represented in this matter by Poweshiek County Attorney Bart Claver. Also with Mr. Claver are Assistant Attorney Generals Scott Brown and Laura Roan. The defendant, Christian Rivera, appears in person with his attorneys of record, Chad Freeze and Jennifer Freeze. Mr. Rhodes, could I have you approach, please, so I can swear you in? Just go ahead and step over here if you would. Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm that you will interpret accurately, completely, and impartially, using your best skill and judgment and in accordance with the Code of Professional Conduct for Judicial Branch Interpreters.
I do.
Okay. Record should reflect that Mr. Rivera, the defendant, has an interpreter, that being Stephen Rhodes, to help and assist him throughout this process, and that Mr. Rhodes has been sworn in. File reflects the state of Iowa filed the trial information in this matter on Friday, September 14th, 2018. On that same date, the court approved the trial information. Trial information charges the defendant with the crime of murder in the first degree. Today is the date and time set for arraignment. Begin with this question for the defense. Has Mr. Rivera received a copy of the trial information?
He has received a copy, Your Honor.
Mr. Rivera, is that accurate?
Yes.
Mr. Freeze, does the defendant, Mr. Rivera, wish to have the trial information read to him?
Your Honor, given Mr. Rivera's limited understanding of the English language and his limited education, we would ask that the information be formally read to him at this time.
Okay, is the state prepared to do so?
Yes, Your Honor.
Would you do that at this time, sir?
In the Iowa District Court, in and for Poweshiek County, State of Iowa plaintiff versus Christian Rivera, defendant. Criminal number FECR 010822. Trial information. Come now, Bart Claver as Poweshiek County Attorney, and Scott Brown and Laura Roan as Assistant Attorneys General, and in the name and by the authority of the State of Iowa, accuse the defendant, Christian Rivera, of the crime of murder in the first degree, a Class A felony, committed as follows. Said defendant, on or about July 18, 2018, in Poweshiek County, Iowa, did murder Mollie Tibbetts in violation of Iowa Code Section 7071, 707.2, Sub 1, Sub A. A true information.
Thank you, Mr. Claver. I want to next confirm then the trial information lists the defendant's name as Christian Rivera. Is he charged in his true and correct name?
He is charged in his true and correct name, Your Honor. It is spelled correctly.
That's correct, Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
I would also then, for the record along those lines, like to confirm the correct date of birth for the defendant.
The correct date of birth, Your Honor, for Mr. Rivera is 6/11/94.
Mr. Freeze, at this time I'm going to ask you, how does the defendant plead to the charge of murder in the first degree?
Mr. Rivera pleads not guilty.
Is that correct, Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Next question then, Mr. Freeze, does the defendant, Mr. Rivera, demand or waive his right to a speedy trial?
I've explained to Mr. Rivera his right to demand or waive his right to a speedy trial. He waives that right, Your Honor.
Record should reflect that the defendant at this time waives his right to a speedy trial. And Mr. Rivera, is it accurate that you've had plenty of opportunity to discuss this right with your attorneys of record?
Yes.
And you are knowingly, intelligently waiving your right to a speedy trial?
Yes.
Given that, we're going to discuss some dates at this time, but before we do so, on the issue of arraignment and anything else we need to address from the record, does the state have anything else?
For the record, Judge?
Yes.
On the waiver of speedy trial, just to make sure we're clear, is a waiver of his 90-day speedy trial right. He would have 90 days from the date of the filing of the information, obviously, to have his trial brought to trial. So we're just confirming that the 90-day speedy trial right is what he's waiving.
And I appreciate that clarification, Mr. Brown. And for the record, then, Mr. Freeze, the waiver that Mr. Rivera has done and you have referred to is his right to the 90-day waiver.
I should have been more clear on that. Yes, that's right.
Anything else from the state standpoint on the arraignment issue?
No, Your Honor.
Anything else from the defense on arraignment?
No, Your Honor.
I have 3 dates in mind, and I'm going to work backwards on these. The court is going to set trial in this matter to begin at 9:30 a.m. on Tuesday, April 16th, 2019. Is that acceptable to the state?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is that acceptable to the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
We will then set a pretrial conference in this matter for April 4th, 2019 at 9:30. The court is also going to set a trial management conference for December 12th, 2018. Mr. Freeze, let me kind of share with you my thinking on that. To the extent that that is simply logistics that we're going to be discussing, you and your client can discuss the possibility of his waiving his right to be present for that, and it's possible we could do that by telephone.
Certainly.
To the extent it is more substantive than that, we will do it here in the courtroom beginning at 9:30 a.m. Any question on that, Mr. Freeze?
No question on that, no.
From the state standpoint, anything else we need to address on the record here today?
No, Your Honor.
From the defense's standpoint, anything else we need to address today?
The only thing I could think of is the possibility of extension of deadlines for filing motions, designating defenses, things of that nature. Perhaps we can discuss that and confer with the court later.
Why don't counsel, while we're here, discuss that today. If there's an agreement, we can confirm that in writing. To the extent you need me to weigh in on that, certainly we'll be prepared to do so. Anything else from the defense's standpoint?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, with that then, we'll close the record. Thank you, everyone.